So let's bring in Bloomberg's ECB team leader, Paul Gordon, in Frankfurt. Paul, well done with the story. Just crossed the Bloomberg. You've talked to officials familiar with the matter. What are they saying about July?
The issue here is that we are seeing a slowdown in the first quarter, have seen a slowdown in the first quarter. That was acknowledged just a few moments ago by President Mario Draghi in a statement at the IMF meetings in Washington, where he did say that the growth cycle may have peaked. That drew some attention, but he does expect the momentum will continue. The key here for some officials, though, is they want to make sure that the momentum will continue into the second quarter. The next meeting after next week's one will be in June. That could be too soon to make that judgment. So some of them say, look, July may be the better choice.
Yeah, Paul, July's funny, as you say. It's out of the forecast, so it's a tricky month. But you've also spoken to economists. What's the view as to how the ECB starts to tweak? Let's start with its language. What's the next logical step?
The next step that people are looking out for is a break between the link between asset purchases and the outlook for inflation. At the moment, asset purchases will continue until the inflation outlook is deemed as being on track towards the ECB's goal. At some point, it's felt that asset purchases have to stop, even though inflation is not headed in that direction, because there are other stimulus measures there, such as negative interest rates. So economists are looking for that change of language. That could come in June. There was a split on that measure, about 50-50, but last month, 80% thought that decision would come in June. And then after that comes the decision, right, this is how we're going to end QE. Most economists still see QE ending this year. I have to make that point. It's just the decision itself could come at the last moment.
And now, Paul, we're beginning to ask, what happens after the end of QE with rates? And Novotny was almost scolded for, casting an opinion, saying that, he'd cut them by 20 basis points when it starts. It seems economists back him up. They think that maybe he's got a point, yeah?
Yes, raised them by 20 basis points on the deposit rate first, which is minus 0.4%, and then a little later the main refinancing rate, formerly the chief policy rate, not lately, which is currently at 0. I think a concern at the ECB was Novotny was getting into the area of sequencing. What do you do? Is it questionable whether you start to raise rates before, for example, ending asset purchases? The ECB has said that's not at all the case, and it seems to be sticking to that kind of a line. But in terms of what the steps are and whether you do deposit rate first, well, that is potentially on the cards from the economist's point of view.